know Patrick Dangerfield was itching a bit last week to play and had to be held back. How is it?
No, he's fine. So he was close last week. As we alluded to, we were going to be cautious with him. Looking back, he had a lung issue, and that was sort of the problem that we needed to be really sure about. And I've said a number of times that I just don't think it's the modern way at our club anyway to risk any player, irrespective of status within the group, with injuries that you might have played with, back in the day. You've got to move with the times. But that was an indication of sort of how close he was, and therefore how good he was going to be for this week. And he's trained sort of as expected, given that backdrop. So good to have him back.
He doesn't have to do anything else to prove that.
No, he's already done that, so he's in.
And Asaba coming back in as well too. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably maybe the first time you have that whole back six almost fully in its place. What a benefit that's going to be, given that test you have to manage throughout the year.
Yeah, and it's the first time this year that we've actually had a decision to make around some management concerns. We, again, don't make too many secrets of the fact that that's something that we prioritise. We just haven't had the opportunity to really do it in any meaningful way this year. So we're sort of finally getting to that point, which is probably the case with Sydney as well. So, I'll be honest, you prefer the opposition to be struggling when you play them, but for the good of the game, you do want to see teams be able to play somewhere near their capacity, and they clearly look as if they're ready to do that as well.
You still have the ability, given you just mentioned there, to be able to manage some of your older guys to the back half of the year, given you're not in the position that you were last year, and you're a tight strap coming back into the season.
Yeah, look, it's a good question, but we like to think that we consider everything, but very rarely do we look at the ladder or look at opposition teams or look at the stage of the season and use that as the impetus to manage our players. It's generally around the specific case study, and as I said, we're probably in that position this week for the first time during the year, and I suspect irrespective of results we'll still think that way going into the finals. As you get a bit closer and the mathematical equation becomes a bit more clear, then that will come into it. But yeah, I can't remember ever thinking I will manage this player and think that that will cost us the game. And I think that's probably a similar attitude we'll take in for the rest of the year.
Is there anyone in particular you're thinking of managing for this match against Sydney?
Yeah, look, there are a few candidates, but if you don't mind, I'd rather not declare them this early in the preparation.
Fair enough. And Jeremy Cameron, obviously discussed last week. How's he holding up? 4 or 5 days out.
Yeah, he seems to be really good to me, but you shouldn't take any notice of my observation because it's really it's irrelevant to an extent. The pleasing thing for me is that he just looks normal around the place. He's his happy self, but again, take it with a grain of salt, because if I ask him how he's going, he's unlikely to tell me that he's struggling. And so I leave that to our medical staff. It was a really heavy hit, and so he's in the concussion protocols, and that's our focus at the moment. He's got a bit of a shoulder issue from that contact as well. Once he sort of progresses through the protocols, we'll get a sort of better sense for where he's at, but optimistic that once he's out of the protocols, he'll be ready to play.
The shoulder, is it structural things or something that scans come back in terms of what the issue is?
They're always structural, otherwise there's no issue. So yeah, you got a knock on the shoulder, but he'll probably have it strapped up when he comes back, but do yourself a favour and watch how many players have shoulder strapping out there. So it's it's one of those things where he's a bit sore from that contact, but I couldn't say now whether it would have prevented him from playing this week, but time will tell on that one.
How's Gary been this week after the hit?
He's glad he didn't get suspended. He probably would have if he were wearing a different jumper, and sort of speaks to the split-second decisions that players have got to make. And I think, even with the rules at the moment, in my opinion, there's too much of a bias towards trying to read players' intent, and I can't do that very well. I don't think you can do it very well from TV or from the stands, and the umpires, in a way, have the hardest job of all because their heart rate's 180 running around from a obscured view, and then they're trying to work out what a player's intention is. Doesn't make much sense to me to make it harder. But I think the real challenge for Gary was not so much how he was going to come away from the game, it was how he was going to respond in game, and I think his performance spoke for itself.
Menegola come back through the VFL. Is he a guy that you still think can help you out in this chase of the playing size?
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Yeah, Sam's been a really important player to us and great man around the club. It's been a brutal time for him over the last 12 months or so. To see him fighting his way back is exciting for everyone. He's the ultimate professional. Yeah, I can't wait to see him back in our team. He hasn't played for so long, so we're just going to cool our jets a little bit, let him get a few more games under his belt at VFL level. But yeah, I'm really confident he can play a part from here.
Just on Astava, it's been talked about in trade circles. Apparently, Port Adelaide have some interest in him. I mean, how important is he to your side since that move back? And I mean, how hard will you guys fight to keep him if he does get overseas?
Yeah, good questions. And in a way, you kind of take it as a, if I were a Sava, I would take it as a compliment that other teams are interested. And as a coach, I certainly do. We've got players that other teams want. If you're a good team, that should be the case. To how hard we'd fight for him, yeah, about as hard as last year. Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Swans are in a bit of a unique situation. You're probably the only one that can relate to that, given this, the thumping of Melbourne 12 years ago. I think you came out and smacked the Suns by 150 points the next week. Is there anything you can take out of that from that experience? Not
for me, but I don't ever really remember that period very well. No, I think it's a question for them to answer. Like, we try to take the same approach every single week, which is expect the opposition to play better than they did the previous week, and if they didn't play very well the previous week, expect them to play near their best, which is, again, I think the competition, you don't need to analyse it with too much depth to sort of see that there are some teams who have been very, very good in the last year or so, get troubled a little bit by injury or a few things that have gone against them, and you fall back to the field pretty quickly. So I don't make a habit of looking at a game that was 2 months ago, or I don't look at ladder position. You just try to get a sense for where that team's at right at that point in time, and how relevant a 171-point win was to where they are at is a bit hard to ascertain. So I just simplify it and say they've got pretty much their preferred players back with a few exceptions, and at their best they were a very, very good team last year, so that's what we're expecting.
There's increase in terms of that ladder position discussion, chasing the top eight, what the planification might be at the end of the season. But for you now, just trying to, now that you've got close to a full-strength team, trying to build back some of that cohesion.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of explaining it. It's similar to the way we approached last year, and it's similar to the way we should approach this year as well. Try not to get too hung up on what's happened in the past. You can't change that anyway, and don't get too anxious about what might come in the future. And I break my own rule, because if you're involved at a footy club, you don't watch other games barracking for anyone in particular unless they can help your cause, and that's a bad way to watch the footy, I reckon. All of a sudden then you do start noticing the umpires and and things that in certain ways that teams play that might annoy you. Again, it's just a silly way of thinking. So as soon as I find myself slipping into that, I remind myself, I hope our players aren't thinking that way as well. Let's try to stay in the moment and have confidence that our best will be good enough.
So Selwood over in the Aussie camp over at Lords, I don't know if you've seen the photos, he's got the full Australia kit on. I'm not sure what his official role is with the team, but what would he be bringing to the Aussie preparations from a cricket point of view?
Nothing technical, I don't think. Great opportunity though for him, isn't it? I think everyone involved in footy, sort of, as much as we love this time of year, kind of the European summer has some appeal. I guess you need to be AFL CEO to get that opportunity. Gil won't mind me saying that, I'm sure. Dills might have to wait a couple of years. But no, it's a busy time of year over there as well. We're all going to get some late nights watching those guys.